Hi, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, April 19th, and we are joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists. Callie Fausey from the Santa Barbara Independent, Nick Welsh, executive editor of the Independent, and Josh Molina, man of many hats, including Santa Barbara Talks, the popular newscast, which is a must listen this week. All right, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's start, Callie. Things are not looking any better from the point of view of the conflict between the Santa Barbara Unified School District and the Teachers Union. I guess the first round of mediation is broken down or finished, or where are we now?
Yeah, so mediation is over. It didn't work. So the next step in the process is that they can choose to move on to fact finding, which is just another step in the impasse process. And then, if the fact finding result doesn't result in a report, doesn't result in a settlement, then the um, district can impose, their last, best, and final offer to SBTA, and SBTA can legally go on strike. And I think that is where we're headed.
So, this process, I guess, is a state mandated process for school districts to avoid teacher strike, but it
Mhm.
takes forever, right? We've only got what, 7 or 8 weeks of school left? Is this something more likely to come to a head in the fall, you think?
I would say so. It's a long process, and then even like mediation has taken a while. They've only had two sessions, but I think it's been sort of a scheduling issue. Um, and then the fact finding process can take like anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So yeah, it's gonna be a while.
Yeah, and the fact finding, so basically both sides would then say, here's how we understand the finances of the school district to stand, and therefore we should get what we want. Well, that seems kind of important, right? Because Hilda keeps saying they have no idea what they're talking about, essentially. I'm putting words in her mouth, but that they're completely off base about this 23% raise. Are they likely to come down on that, or are they dug in?
I'm pretty sure that they're dug in, to be honest. I guess we'll see what the official, advisory report says. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that the district is, digging their feet in. They're not really budging. I think that if they were going to budge, I feel like it would have been in one of the 8 hour long mediation sessions that they've already had. But that didn't result in much. So
Josh, you led with the possibility of a teacher strike. Do you see any room in between what they're demanding? Because they haven't moved off of that 23% since this all started back in the fall. I mean, is there any place for compromise there?
I think you have two very strong leaders on both sides who are not wanting to budge or bend for the other. And Osby Galindo is like the right person at the right time to
For the
lead this
teachers
effort
union.
for the teachers union, the president, because he's very good. He's very passionate, very strong. He is advocating like no other teachers union president has that I can recall. And he believes in the whole mission. And then on the other side, you have Hilda, who is really just, I just don't understand how she doesn't understand the legacy she's going to leave this district. She must not care. It's like at some point, whether you're right or wrong, you have to think about the school district and the kids and the reputation of the school district. And she's believes that she's right, but she's making it all about her. Like she's a strong leader who's not going to budge to these people. And it's the wrong thing. If these teachers strike, it will be the ultimate failure of Hilda Maldonado. She needs to figure out a way to fix this immediately because she will never overcome that legacy that she had left. And it's not like the first thing she's done. We've already seen the exodus of the board. We've seen people leaving for new jobs for less money. We've seen so much fallout. We've seen civil lawsuits against the district. I just don't know, like what does she think is the upside of this?
My question though is, what is the financial reality in terms of what resources the district has? I mean, I don't know, and it would be good to hear from you or Callie. You know, how much money does the district have, and how does that relate to 23% or what the district is offering? At some point, you kind of say, well, we can afford this and we can't afford that. I don't know what that point is.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I would say the one easy thing is and is the COO. Like she created this position for a COO, a friend of hers from the LA Unified School District. That is what Kelly might remember the exact 280, almost 300,000. I don't remember how much money this position is. So, Nick, you're right. Is the money there? But there's also some very easy symbolic things that you can do to say, hey, we get it. We're going to eliminate this position in the budget cycle. We want to work with you. That's some money that can go to some teacher. And I don't see them even, that's not even on the table as far as I know.
You know, Hilda's grasp of the symbolic is obviously not very good. And, you know, to hire that person to do what she should have been able to do on her own at this time is really sticking it in the eye of anybody who works for the district. And it's just, it's a sign, it's like a big target on her back with a kick me please.
well, and the other thing is, you know, because they screwed up not paying however many million, between $3 and $7 million that should have gone to teachers last year. I mean, Callie, tell me if I'm wrong, but I really get the feeling that the teachers wouldn't trust any numbers that they come up with anyway. I mean, school finance is impossible to understand in the best of times. It's like an MC Escher print or something, you know, with all these stairways going into nowhere. But I really despair about how this one's going to come out.
Yeah, the teachers do not trust the district in the slightest. You should read the Instagram comments on the Independence posts. It's the teachers who comment just really lay it all out there.
Yeah,
Has there ever been a strike before?
you would know that better than anyone.
Yeah.
You've been here longer than
I don't remember it.
all of us put together.
Yeah.
I've not heard of one. I don't in the historic past, but maybe one of our viewers can send an email and let us know. All right. Thanks, Callie, on that. Nick, you've sort of informally launched the Oscar Gutierrez for Mayor campaign in your column this week, which is ostensibly about what I like to call the Community Benefit Improvement District, or CBID. What is that all about?
But CBID is a acronym for ketamine. No, it's a new pharmacological derivative of cannabis.
All right.
What
All right.
it is,
You're giving
what
marijuana.
CBID is the latest Deus Ex Machina designed to save downtown from itself and to save Santa Barbara from its residents in terms of what we're doing downtown. And for the first time, what it would be is where the property owners of downtown, which in this case is the freeway up to Solar Street on one block each way of State Street, all the property owners in that group would say, we're going to tax ourselves and raise $2.2 million a year with the combined earnings of that. And we're going to use that money to clean up State Street, to make it a safe place, hire security goons, brand State Street as a place people want to go, program stuff that would actually make it a lively, cool place. And So it is really a massive departure from all the talks that we've been having ad nauseum on this subject for so long, where everybody is at the table except for the people who own the property. So that is why, in my recitation in this week's annual approval, I kind of came down emphatically in favor of it, even though there are some good criticisms. It's sort of, if you don't get those guys involved in the deal, nothing is going to happen. And nothing has happened, so why not try this? And there's not money at City Hall to pay for the things that they want to pay for. I mean, we're looking at a $9 million deficit or something like that. So it's not like City Hall is going to say, oh, here we go. Here's the money to do all the stuff that we've never done before. And right now we have something called a downtown organization, which is supposed to do some of this stuff. And that basically operates on a shoestring budget of about 250 grand a year. So it's a significant improvement in terms of the amount of money available.
Here's what I don't understand. So 30% of the property owners had a vote in favor of this, but does that mean it happens, or does
No,
that
okay.
goes
I
on?
mean, it's a 1-2 punch deal. So the first step is you have a 30% threshold, and if you have a 30% threshold, then that triggers a real election. And in order to win a
A
real election,
citywide election.
amongst the property owners, it's only by you and I do not get to vote. The only people who vote in this are the people who own property. And the more property you own, the more of a vote you have. And so it's like shares in a corporation.
But they barely got the 30%, right?
They would not have got the 30% if the city council hadn't said, we're going to put our shares. I think they have 19 properties downtown, and that is 8-point-something% of the shares. That got them across the finish line. So whether they can get to, that's how like the 35%, the county of Santa Barbara owns a lot of property, and it's expected they will also vote for it. But there is some gap between that and the 50% that they absolutely need. And it's unclear if they can get there from here.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, and the other point you made in the piece was, how a lot of, I mean, there's so many absentee landlords with LLCs and so on and so forth. I mean, were they able to actually reach all of these owners?
I don't know the answer to that question. What I heard from people involved in this is that the biggest challenge was to get in front of these people. First, the challenge was deciphering the LLC veil and who is the actual person involved, and then getting time with them. There was also a problem because two of the people or entities pushing this, one was the Chamber of Commerce and one was the downtown organization. And they have different people involved, and they have different turf ambitions. And what I am told is that it was not exactly harmonious out the gate between them. I'm told that they have reconciled and they are now growing in the same direction, but early on they were not. So that also slowed them down.
All right. Well, I mean, this is not like some bolt from the blue. I mean, there's a lot of places that do this, including
hundreds and
Village
hundreds.
Road, right?
Yeah, Coast Village Road has said, hey, so like one of the biggest property owner in downtown is a guy named Jim Cannell who runs SEMA Management. And Jim Cannell has made it very clear, no way, no how, nothing. And he, among other things, hates the parklets, and he wants the parklets to disappear.
Amen, brother.
And supporters of the CBID say, hey, Jim, I hate to tell you, but the only reason we got rid of Coast Village parklets on Coast Village roads is we had a CBID there. And if we hadn't had a CBIZ there, we would never have gotten rid of the parklets. So if you don't like parklets, join with us. And Jim is very stubborn and preternaturally so, and he's going to do what he wants to do. And he has a lot of points that make sense, but on Tuesday, he kind of made it sound like CBID was a second coming of the Communist Manifesto, and he was going on this diatribe against collectivism and the assault upon his property rights. And he sounded a bit hysterical, I would say, but you can't use that term because it has connotations of free-floating uteruses.
All right. Speaking of rich real estate people who want what they want, Josh, Rick Caruso, the erstwhile mayor of candidate for mayor in Los Angeles and the developer of and owner of the Miramar Hotel, has got some great new ideas, which the neighbors aren't all that crazy, don't think they're all that great. Can you lay that one out?
Yeah, so the Miramar, the Rosewood Miramar, owned by Rick Caruso, who ran for mayor of LA and has built a bunch of shopping malls, developer. He wants to do a couple of things at the Miramar property, which is build some employee housing. And he also wants to build some apartments, high-end apartments for super wealthy people who say, I wish I could stay at the Miramar for more than 30 days. He also wants to add boutique shops. I think it's something like 20,000 square feet of retail shops where you can buy Rolexes and $800 pairs of jeans and all sorts of overpriced clothing. And so the people who live around the Miramar are very upset about this because they say you're turning the Miramar into a shopping mall. And so this is going to attract people from Beverly Hills, from LA, outside of Montecito and Santa Barbara to come in and shop and park and congest traffic. They also don't like the idea of these apartments going in there, which are going to be super high end. They're luxury penthouse type apartments for super wealthy people.
These are not the ones for the housekeeping staff that he's.
No, those are on the other side. And so they say they're supportive of the employee housing. I think they're talking something like 24 units for people who make below the AMI average area median income. And so they're saying, we like that. That's fine. There's a need for the staff, but then they worry, is this really going to go to the housekeepers, the janitors, the gardeners? Is it going to go to administration? So this is a whole thing that's been going on, and stunningly, Rick Caruso himself showed up at the Montecito Association meeting to make an appearance. His son is on the development team, and he and another marketing person spoke, but there was Rick right there, very charismatic, very charming, there just making a visual impact and impression. And the residents, many of whom I've talked to, were very upset. They turned around in the meeting, they looked at him and they said, would you build this next to you? Why are you doing this? Why should we trust that you care about what's happening here in this community? And he answered them very polished. He said, I wouldn't do anything here that I wouldn't want next to my residents. We're classy. Everyone's going to love this thing in 5 years. And so that's sort of the dynamic. The Montecito Association didn't talk about it. It was a presentation. So eventually this has got to go to the board. So on one hand, everybody agrees we need the employee housing, but is Caruso trying to really build the luxury of housing and the boutique shops and saying, we'll throw in some of these affordable apartments too. And it's this whole package deal. There's no rezoning involved, so it's not part of that whole discussion. It's its own separate project.
Who's the decision maker? The county planning commission or the board, or who?
I think ultimately the board of supervisors will have to approve this, but it has to go through these various steps first. And the Montecito Association is made up of people in Montecito, so they're weighing in on it. And I think they may be, not all of them, but generally supportive of this. So we'll see. They have not taken a stand. And Caruso's got the slickest LA marketing PR firm you're ever going to imagine. I mean, these are the kind of people who's, they're wearing $10,000 suits and they're just very well funded.
Yeah,
Josh,
it always goes
Josh,
over
your
my
class envy is really kind of coming out here now. So did Rich Caruso say stay classy, Montecito?
He did not say that, no. But the team did spend a long time telling me how they were reinstalling the raft or the thing that was a birthright for anyone who grew up in Montecito, be able to swim out from Miramar. So, you know,
Isn't
they're
this the same Rich Caruso whose security goons were chasing people off the beach?
I think there's only one. So I guess so. I used to work at the Miramar, by the way, back in the early 90s.
Oh,
So
now we
What'd you do?
understand
What'd you
why
do,
you're so
Josh?
biased.
What did you do?
I was front desk staff, and at the time, the poolside rooms were $70 and the oceanfront were 135. So I got to get yelled at by rich people who, you know, why isn't there a reservation available, etc. So I didn't grow up in Montecito, but I do have a connection.
Wow, that's something. All right. Hey, Callie, you got a piece about the city's new city carbon neutral plan. And I have to say, anytime I read a story that refers to something as a living document, I start I start
Do
looking
you reach for your gun?
for my wallet. But so what's different about this plan than all the other plans? Passover coming up next week is a good question. Well, how is this different?
Well, I first of all wanted to say, Josh, if you ever want to get yelled at by rich people, you should work at the Montecito Starbucks because, wow.
I can totally see that. You know, I was just in there. I was so angry. They removed all the plugs, all the outlets. It's like,
Really?
you don't want homeless people. You don't want working people who need a place to work for an hour. Like, I'm so angry at that
Oh,
Starbucks.
there's a whole
Go ahead.
thing. Yeah, I mean, the other Starbucks, the new by where Coffee Bean was, you can't, there's no tables inside. I mean, they just have a few chairs. You have to sit outside and be cold. Anyway, speaking of carbon neutral,
Yeah.
so what's new in this plan and where does it stand?
So I guess it's really just a layout of the city's ideas. Basically, it's you know, rooted a little bit in some of the foundational initiatives that they have, like Santa Barbara Clean Energy. But yeah, it's really just like a lot of optimistic thinking about, you know,
Aspirational.
yeah,
Aspirational.
it's very aspirational, and it's good. Like it's nice to see, you know, the city put effort into a report like this, make it, you know, reader friendly. Like it's colorful, it's cute, like it has illustrations. Like it seems like they really want the public to understand the initiatives they want to lay down. And yeah, it's like everything, you know, from installing more electric vehicle chargers around the city to like looking for composting opportunities. But it's
You,
basically, yeah,
how
sorry.
does it fit with the issues that have recently or not so recently arisen at the Tahiguas landfill, though? Isn't that is that accounted for in there? I know you've had a close-up personal tour of the place at Cali, as I recall.
I did. I'm not sure what problems you're talking about though.
In terms of the recycling issues and the machinery not working and it requiring more money and things like that. Those parts.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't really address any of those problems.
And then it also seemed to have an unhealthy reliance on bicycling. Callie, I don't know if you had that same reaction as I did to reading about it. Nick, I am old enough to remember when you wrote about the failure of the county's aspirational clean carbon neutral plan in what 2022, right? That was the 15 years when we were supposed to have the 40 by 40 or 30 by 30 or whatever the hell it was.
Fortunately, you may be old enough to remember it, but
He's too old.
all
for
those
that.
aspirational plans begin to look alike. Uh,
City of, wait a minute, yeah, I just had it up here. I'll find it. Go ahead. Oh, you know why? Because Callie linked to your story in her story. Nick.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to go read it.
Yeah.
It was a poodle.
April
Who's
6th.
Poodle?
Nick,
was
it
a
was only
poodle.
2 years ago. 2
Okay,
years.
well, what did I
2 years.
write? Give me a hint.
All right. We all have our cross to bear. Among my regrets is not having a prehensile tail affixed to my posterior. There's a hint.
You know what? I don't know who wrote that, but that is one hell of a lady. And I would read at least the rest of that first paragraph.
All right.
Okay. Just think about in terms of the evolutionary roads not taken. If we could swing around on our tails as a transportation form, we wouldn't be talking about cars.
Electric bikes. That's a good point. Josh.
Which makes me
Sorry,
question the
wait.
whole evolution theory in the first place.
Sorry, Jerry. I said like they're not doing much to fix what's happening at the recycling center, but that was wrong. They are looking to just reduce the amount of waste that is going to Tahibas. So, reducing single-use plastics, and that was one of the things that sounded the most appealing to me, was banning single-use plastics in the city. And I'm pretty sure Goleta already has, so taking a page from their book just to reduce the amount of shit going to Tahibas.
All right. All right, Josh, we've talked sort of around this $9 million budget deficit. Is it a big deal? Not a big deal? How concerned should we be on this on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, what was the big deal was that at the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce annual State of the City meeting, where it's supposed to be just kind of a fun event where people talk about the past year and things coming up, Renee Eyerly, the assistant city manager, in her panel discussion just kind of threw it out there and said, by the way, we're expecting a $7 million budget deficit, which, as I learned from Nick and others, it may actually be 9 million. And then she said they're thinking about a 0.5-cent sales tax for the ballot. And so that was the news of this event. And I thought it was just kind of like interesting. That's not interesting. Probably not the right time and place for her to announce that, especially with council members in the audience, and kind of a big bomb that she is dropping. Every year, the city always projects a budget shortfall when they go into budget discussions. And so the idea is, hey, council, we have this shortfall, so we need to be fiscally conservative and tighten our belts. And I don't want you off going all out and trying to fund all your pet projects. And of course, the council is like, oh, they build this stuff in. It's really not that bad. We can use more of our reserves. Megan Harmon had talked about lowering their reserve policy so that we don't have these shortfalls. So yes, it's a big deal, but it's also not like, wow, I can't believe this, because it's part of the budget cycle. They come out with this. Every department's going to have to trim, 2.5% or whatever. They're going to debate library hours. They're going to talk about parks and rec cuts, the whole thing they do every year. And then they'll present a balanced budget. But that 0.5-cent sales tax, if they actually do that, that's going to be a significant thing for people to be talking about.
And every person who's running for city council or re-election is going to get asked about it. I mean, just look at what happened to Gavin Newsom's thing with the homeless bonds, and it barely made it. I mean, people are not in the mood.
Well, what's interesting on that point is that, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, the county supervisors talked about their plans to do very much the same thing. And they hired some political consulting firm that did polling, and they said, well, what do you think to the possible voters? And what they quickly discovered was that don't even go there. the support or lack thereof for this idea was extremely limited. And if the more information you gave voters to try to educate them to make them want to vote for it, they concluded the less they liked it. So it didn't look, and maybe the voting attitude in the city of Santa Barbara will be different than what it will be in the county. It's a whole different kettle of fish. I think you might get more support in the city for it, but it's going to be an uphill fight, and you have to be able to run a really good campaign.
All right, real quick, Nick, the grand jury report about the deaths in the jail, they want what, an independent investigation?
This is kind of a polite tap on the head to Stan Roden, who was a grand jury advocate. He was a member of the grand jury last time around, who was very much involved in the what I'm trying to say, the whole we need to fix the jail move, and particularly healthcare and mental health care in the jail. So this was a tip of the hat to him, because he had thought that in Santa Barbara County and in most counties in California, the sheriff and the coroner are one and the same. So when somebody dies in a jail, the sheriff investigates. Well, the sheriff runs the jail, and so if you're worried about somebody dying in the jail because they weren't cared for properly, to have the jailers investigate it seems like a conflict of interest. And that's pretty much what the grand jury concluded. They said, well, it's either a conflict of interest or it looks like one. And so you need to do something about that. And so what they would have is they hire some outside investigator or come up with a way so that the sheriff
Wasn't investigating himself, basically.
Wasn't just investigating himself. There wasn't any cases brought out like, here's a clear case where had this happened, we would have come with a different result. I think there have been 24 deaths in the county jail since the last 20 years or something like that. I think maybe 34, I'm sorry. There's a lot of people who die, and the rate at which people are dying in the county jail is increasing. And probably the question would be, how are drugs getting into the county jail as much as they are? That would be a really interesting grand jury investigation. What do they do to stop drugs from getting in? But it gets in anyway. You have fentanyl deaths. The jail is constantly saving people from the brink of overdose, but they don't save everybody. And
okay,
how does that happen?
All right. Well, lest the supervisors put this one on the dusty shelf with all which they usually do with grand jury reports, I just cite the case of the soon-to-be ex-supervisor Williams ignoring the grand jury report on the cannabis. But
stop patting yourself on the shoulder, Jerry.
I'm patting the grand jury on the shoulder. What are you?
I know, but it's a surrogate for yourself.
All right, Callie, we now have a date certain for the ketamine story. I think what you should do is to get Mary Ann to pony up some more expenses just so you can go over there a couple more times and make sure you got all the details right. When are we going to see that story?
So that will be the cover of our May 9th issue. I'm really, really excited about it. I'm very proud of this one.
All right, good. We're looking
I
forward.
can't wait.
Yeah. Nick, what are you up to?
As little as possible.
All right. And Josh, you've been busy over there at Santa Barbara Talks this week. You delivered a rant about the whole NPR scandal, and even more so, invited back former county Democratic chairperson Doraka Larimore Hall, who had many things to say about many people.
Yeah, so I had Doraka Larimore Hall on my podcast, and I remember Doraka from 20 years ago, and You know, I chronicled his rise from young radical activist to, you know, where he's at now. And so, you know him. I like having him on the show. He's very smart. He's got a lot of viewpoints, but I think everyone should watch this podcast because Jaraka weighs in. And of course, I'm asking him the questions, right? But we talked about why Doss Williams lost from his perspective. We talked about the role of Dem women and his views on Dem women. And, you know, he basically says that
He trashes Dem women.
he says, you know, they needled, they whispered, they basically handed the election, or you know, he implied they handed the election to Roy Lee. Very strong views about the role of Dem women, and suggesting they're not like they're an old school club. It was run by a board, a self-appointed board, and that they meet once a year and then they don't do anything. All of these things, which we know they're doing a lot more than that. So that was really interesting. He talked about the independent editorial of Doss, and you know, basically the prevailing summary is that on policy, Doss is right, and therefore he should have been endorsed by all these people because he's pro housing, he's pro PLA. He said that. I thought of you, Jerry. You know, and so he's pro these things that are very fundamental to the Democratic Party platform. And he says all these other criticism were all based on personality and what people think of him privately, and that shouldn't matter. And so he kind of calls people out, you know, and so it's very interesting. The other part of it, Jerry, is, you know, he tried to be a delegate for the national presidential election, and he asked people to vote for him, and then mysteriously he was removed from the campaign candidacy by the Biden-Harris campaign. And this may be because of his role with the California Democratic Party and many of the enemies he made during that whole thing that you've written about extensively. And, you know, how he ran for chair, didn't win, and he made a lot of enemies. So he thinks that may have been part of it, or maybe his pro-Palestinian posts on his Facebook. He feels maybe they went through that and like, we don't want this guy. So they plucked him from consideration.
Yeah.
All of that. And then Jerry, he talks about Nick and me and Melinda Burns and you. He extends us a compliment, but then, you know, has a big but after that. So I think it's a good podcast, and I encourage anyone who has views, either pro or con on Duraga, to check it out.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting.
Let me just ask, what does he say Doss had any responsibility
Of course not.
for his own departure?
He attributed it to maybe the party next time should not go into a campaign thinking the seat is safe, which is they did.
Yeah.
He said maybe he should have campaigned a little bit more. He acknowledged that. And he said all these groups, including Dem women, need to look in the mirror because now they've handed the seat, you know, and he's convinced that Roy's like not, he's convinced he's a conservative. I don't think he actually called him a Republican, but he implied that his campaign manager works for Republicans. And so all these groups, he said, fed, including Jerry, including the independent editorial, is what he said, fed into this like conspiracy theory that Doss privately is a bad person, and that's why people voted. And he's like, well, Josh, come out and tell me, why do these women hate him? And I said, that's up to them to say, but it was significant enough that it wasn't just a couple of outsiders, it was a lot of people.
You know, they are what they're trying to do, they're trying to spin this for history, that cannabis had no part in this. You know, Doss told Melinda that too. Oh, nobody ever mentioned cannabis, not once. It was all about housing. And now, you know, Duraka's saying the same thing. Give me a break. Cannabis was the number one reason this guy lost.
He does say that it's fine if people had policy disagreements on cannabis. Sure, that's his, like, that is how it is. I do want to say, though, I do like Duraka. I do think he's smart. And we start the podcast talking about him being a new father. So
all right,
that's really cool. I like that discussion. Sorry, Jerry.
Hey, Callie, where'd you go? We're saying goodbye. All right. Callie Fausey, Nick Welsh, Josh Molina. Callie came back so we could say goodbye. Thank you all for taking the time to talk with us today. Thank you all for watching, and We shall see you next time on Newsmakers. Bye.
All right, we'll see you.